Hello and welcome, this is Cheryl. Thank you so much for joining me today. In this video, I'm going to create a glow-in-the-dark ghost card. I'm going to use this Woof Treat die. I absolutely love this little ghost dog die. I did all my die cutting off screen, so I'm ready to go. I'm also going to use these action wobblers. I've had these for a long time and I haven't used them in a long time, but I thought it would be really fun to create ghosts that kind of wobbled on the card. Before I do anything, I'm doing just a little bit of light ink blending on the ghost part of the die cut. I'm not doing it on the other pieces because they're so tiny I don't think you'd really see it, but I wanted to have a little bit of visual dimension on here before putting on my glow-in-the-dark paste. So once I have that light ink blending done, I can take my little ghost guys, and what I'm using is glow-in-the-dark grit paste. This came out last year and I did a card back then with it as well. I haven't had it sitting in the sun, so you can't really see right now how much it does glow, but I'll show you when these little ghosties are dry. I'll leave them sitting in under my lights or whatever so they can absorb the light. So it's a glow medium that's not going to stay glowy forever. You do need to charge it up with the light, as most glow things do. But I'm going to use a 1-inch wide brush here and I'm just brushing it on here. Now because this is grit paste, it is going to have a gritty look to it, which is totally fine for me. I like the finish of it. It's got just a bit of a different texture to it. As I'm painting it on here, I'm trying to make sure to have a thin, even coat. It's not going to be 100% completely covered. It's going to have some areas that are a little bit thinner, a little bit thicker, but in the end, I really like the way it looks. So now I've let them dry. I let them dry for a couple hours just to make sure that they were good and dry before I started to assemble my dogs here. You could, if you wanted, do a lot of the assembly ahead of time. Aside from putting these little pieces onto the ghost, because you want to make sure to have that space, but you could put the eye pieces underneath, the little pink pieces for the ears, which I forgot to put on this guy before putting them underneath the little sheet piece. I do find that using a jewel picker for the tiny pieces is definitely very helpful. I'm also using some liquid glue so that I have a little bit of wiggle room and can move things around a little bit. So the head part goes under the top part of that sheet, the little feet go under the bottom part, and then we have his little snout, his little nose part here that goes, well, you know exactly where it goes. So once I have that piece on there, I can put the little pumpkin that he's holding. So there's two pieces to the pumpkin. There's the under layer and then the over layer part. The overlayer part, I did it in a few different shades of orange just for a little bit of variety, just the same as with the dogs. I made them all a different color. I didn't want them to be all exactly the same. You can have as much fun with the color variety as you want. Once I have all those pieces layered, I do put an acrylic block over top of it to hold everything nice and flat. Let that glue have some good contact before it starts to set. You could leave that piece on there while it dries. I tend to put it on there for a few moments, and then after that it's set enough that I lift it off, and I usually put it on top of something else. But I do want that air to be able to get to it in order to help it dry just a little bit faster. Now, it doesn't really matter what order you put these together in. The first one, I put the snout on first and then tucked the bucket underneath. This one, I put the bucket and then I'm putting the snout on. The main thing to remember is that the handle for that bucket does get put under there. In my first card creating with these guys, I had forgotten that piece and ended up having to pry it up a little bit in order to tuck it in there. It ended up working out, but it's always nicer to put it together the right way the first time. You can see how quick and easy these pieces come together. There's very little guesswork. It's really easy to know exactly where all the little pieces go. And even those little ears and nose piece, when you do the die cutting for his head and for his snout, it leaves a little bit of an indent there, so you know that's exactly where they're supposed to go. With using the liquid glue, I just have a little bit of wiggle room so I can move and shimmy things until I get the proper placement. Now, the openings for the eyes for these guys are just little holes. So once I have these dried, I'm going to go and take some scrap pieces of blue cardstock. I'm going to make all of their eyes blue and then put that behind there, glue that behind there so that they don't have hollow eyes to them. You can do their eyes whatever color you want. That's just the easiest way that I found in order to do them. So I can put a little bit of glue back there. Doesn't matter how big or how small these pieces are, as long as they cover the holes for the eyes, and they are quite tiny. But to add a little bit of extra texture to these eyes, once they have set a little bit, I'm going to put some glossy accents on both the eyepieces as well as the nose. Again, just to give it a little bit of extra texture. I always love when cards have different textures to them. It makes it look a little bit more interesting. So not only do we have the texture dimension from the die cuts being layered up, but we also have the texture from that grit paste glow on the ghosts, as well as the glossy accents on their eyes and nose. Now, while I'm waiting for the glossy accents to dry, I figured I might as well do a quick ink blended background. I'm using some Distress ink here. This is Hickory Smoke, and it doesn't need to be a super pretty, perfectly blended ink or perfectly ink blended background. I'm just trying to get some good amount of ink on here. I'm using the Spellbinders large ink blending brushes. I actually really love using these for backgrounds because the bristles are really, really soft. And not only is the brush head round, but the bristle, if you look at the brush from the side, it's curved as well. So you don't get harsh edges. This orange here is carved pumpkin, and then I'm going to go in with some Villainous Potion for the bottom part of the background. And I'm using different ink blending brushes for the different colors so that I'm not getting color contamination or mud. This is going to create just a fun, bright, but really simple background. Because these little dogs are going to take up most of the card anyway, I don't need anything too fancy. Here I'm trying to decide whether I want the orange on the top or on the bottom. And it could go either way. It doesn't really need to be one way or another. Again, while I'm waiting for that glossy accents to dry, I might as well start putting things on my card base. So I have a black mat here that I'm using. It was cut to 5 3/8 inches by 4 1/8 inch, and my ink blended background here is cut to 4 inches by 5 1/4. So we have just a little bit of a black edge around it. So my ghost dogs are done. I'm ready to put them onto the background of my card. Now, you don't have to use these action wobblers, but I just thought they would be a fun way to use them. I figured it works perfectly for not only the ghost, but also the dog to have it wiggly. And you can see how cute it is on that background there. Now these do press flat, so you can put them into a regular envelope. You don't need anything special, but once you take it out of that envelope, it pops up and it's raised like about 1/4 inch to 3/8 of an inch above the card. And then you kind of flick the edge of the die cut and it starts to wobble. Now, because these die cuts are kind of close to each other, sometimes you'll wobble one and it will wobble more than one. But it's just a fun look, just something a little bit different, gives you some great dimension. And not only that, but you have the little action, the wobble part. Now you could easily do a card with just one of these guys on here. I just thought it would be fun to do one with 3 there. It would also fill up more of the card. I took a sentiment that I already had pre-done from a previous video. This one is from the All Seasons Autumn set. It's a press plate and die set that's exclusive to the Spellbinders website, and you can find it on there. Here is my finished card. This one was a super quick one, but I absolutely love the final look of it. I love those little wobbles, and I love that glow-in-the-dark feature of it. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I really appreciate all the time you spent here.